This idea of a treadmill goes back to some research that was done in the 1970s that seemed to show that lottery winners got an initial boost in their happiness when they won the lottery. Hooray! But a year later they were no happier than they were before. It was back to ground zero. And that was surprising, but there's some evidence that that is the case. And the reason why that might be the case is a theory that people have a set point for their happiness, that their genes, their early childhood development gets them to a set point where they are, and there are minor perturbations from that, but you end up going back to that set point. And so the set point seems to have to do with genes, and it can also have to do with attitude. Let us say long sustained attitudes, whether you see the world as, or that is a glass as half empty or half full. And so there's gene, there's attitude, and then there's the circumstances you're actually in, whether you won the lottery or not. But in fact, according to the research, circumstances are actually the least of the predictors of whether you feel you're happy or not. And it's true, Americans today are no happier than Americans were 50 years ago, even though we have twice as much income. And this is an example of the consumer treadmill, that all this additional stuff leads to more pollution, of course, but it doesn't actually lead to more happiness. In fact, Americans are working longer than we used to because what we have does not seem to be enough, and so we think if we work even harder, we'll be happier. But it really does not seem to be working out. And my claim is that one of the things that contributes to this is habituation. We get bored with the things we have. And this is something that is known from neuroscience. We have something called a reward system that is operated in the brain. There's some areas deep within the brain called the basal ganglia, and some other areas in other parts of the brain that are involved with this reward system. And there is a release of dopamine, a neurochemical, when we see something that gets us excited. And it turns out that novelty, new things, are the things that get us particularly excited, when things exceed expectations. That gets the dopamine system going. So we're always trying to exceed our expectations. And that accounts for how we get habituated to things. Even a person becomes rich, no matter what you have, you get used to the level that you are at, and that becomes ho-hum and boring. Only if you're the sort of person who's maybe so rich that you can afford to wear clothes once and then throw them away and always have novelty. But you can imagine what that would do to the environment. So we quickly get bored with the things we have. My claim also is that mindfulness can help restore the sense of novelty and actually can make us interested more in the things we have. And in future video I will be showing some of the scientific evidence that shows that the way we pay attention can affect the sense of novelty, and mindfulness, paying attention, can actually make the ordinary world seem more novel, more fresh, and more interesting to us. Now, I want to qualify what I said about becoming twice as rich not making you happy. What that is when a group of people, an entire society like America in general, becomes twice as rich. It doesn't make people happy. There is evidence that when individual people become wealthier, but everybody else stays the same and they get ahead, that makes people happier. It's not because they have more stuff. It's actually kind of a status thing, a psychological thing. It's effectively saying you're special because you got ahead of the other people. If everybody progresses in the same way and everybody maintains their relative position with each other, it doesn't make it a difference. But if you get ahead of other people, that really feels good. And that's one of the things that powers the rat race to get more and more, to get ahead of the person, or in the case of keeping up with the Joneses, not to fall behind. So these are all things that are psychological in effect. And the answer I'm claiming is psychology. We have to figure out how we can satisfy people's psychological needs without all this material consumption, because it's the material consumption that is ruining the environment and causing climate change that is going to be very dangerous in the future. So if we can satisfy people's psychological needs psychologically and not through manufacturing and producing more stuff, that would be really great for the environment.